All right, so we're diving into this treasure trove of vintage Mad magazines you sent us. And, well, it looks like we're taking a trip back to the 90s. A blast from the past to see what folks found funny back then. We've got everything from cheating scandals to tech taking over kids' games, even a comic strip about the concept of infinity.
Oh, wow.
But the one that really has me scratching my head is Beavis and Butthead as senior citizens.
Senior
And that's
citizen.
a curveball. It's fascinating to see how they envisioned those iconic slackers, froze them in time, and then just plopped them right smack dab in the middle of a retirement home. I mean, are they like a relic of a generation that just refused to grow up? Or is this like a satirical glimpse into what happens when teenage rebellion, collides head on with old age?
Yeah, so we see them in their signature AC/DC Metallica shirts, still glued to the TV. Except, now they're arguing over the remote in retirement home. They've traded homework rows for complaints about bingo night.
Bingo night.
Like, come on, guys.
I mean, it makes you wonder.
If Mad Magazine is onto something here, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if we kind of connect this to, the bigger picture, it does make you wonder if those anxieties in the 90s about a generation that was like stuck in perpetual adolescence were accurate. Or was Mad Magazine just, playing on stereotypes?
Right.
I mean, think about it. Today, we see older generations embracing technology, starting new careers, really shattering those old school retirement norms.
Right, you have a point there. I mean, rocking out a classic rock on, VR headsets doesn't sound too far off for a tech-savvy senior these days.
Right, exactly.
But it makes you think about how those anxieties have evolved. Back then, it was all about kids, being glued to MTV. And now it's smartphones and social media.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, is that, the core concern, it kind of remains the same. Like, how is technology shaping our lives, especially, the younger generation? And this Mad Magazine comic, even though it's, poking fun at aging, it seems to tap into that underlying worry that we're kind of losing touch with something essential.
Yeah, and maybe that quote-unquote something essential is changing with each generation, right? Back then, it was traditional games and face-to-face interactions. Now it might be digital literacy, navigating online spaces, or even the ethics of AI. I mean, it seems like we're always grappling with, what it even means to grow up in a world that's constantly evolving.
Right. And this Beavis and Butthead comic, as absurd as it is, it forces us to ask, what does it even mean to grow up anymore? I mean, are we all just becoming more tech-savvy versions of our teenage selves?
Yeah. Speaking of navigating the complexities of a tech-driven world, let's take a look at this other comic strip titled 25 Tao, or TAO, Successful Updated Versions of Traditional Kids Games.
Oh, this one is this one is brilliant. It takes like all those classic games that we all grew up with, right? And it gives them this hilarious tech-infused twist. Like imagine musical chairs where you're quieting for the last charging port.
Oh my gosh.
Or tag where you're tracking your friends through, GPS.
Oh, wow.
It's like this playful but pointed commentary on how technology has reshaped even the simplest childhood activities.
I remember when the biggest tech worry was your Tamagotchi dying. You
Oh,
know,
wait.
this comic from the 90s is almost prophetic in how it portrays technology's creeping influence on childhood. But do you think it was more of a playful job or a genuine anxiety about kids losing touch with traditional play?
I think it was a bit of both. I
Yeah,
mean, remember, the internet was still relatively new back then.
right.
So this rapid influx of technology into everyday life, even children's games, would have naturally sparked some anxieties. But what's striking is how those anxieties have evolved. Today, we're not just worried about kids losing touch with traditional games, right?
Right.
We're grappling with the impact of screens on their development, social skills, and mental health.
And let's not forget about, the ethical dilemmas that come with technology. This comic strip, while hilarious, it does make you think about the potential downsides of a childhood that's, dominated by tech.
Absolutely. It's not just about nostalgia for a simpler time. It's about ensuring that technology complements, not replaces, those essential aspects of childhood development, like creativity, social interaction, and physical activity.
So it seems like Mad Magazine, even with its over-the-top humor, was tapping into this very real tension between embracing technological advancements and preserving the core values of childhood.
Yeah, and that tension is even more pronounced today as we navigate a world where technology is evolving at an unprecedented pace.
Well, before we get too lost in the digital world, let's switch gears and explore something that has fascinated humankind for centuries, the concept of infinity.
Ah, yes, the comic strip that tries to make the abstract concept of, an infinite number of things relatable
Right.
and a little bit absurd. It's a clever way to grapple with something so vast and mind-boggling.
They start with something simple, like an infinite number of readers reading this particular Mad Magazine issue. But then it spirals into these increasingly ridiculous scenarios, like an infinite number of episodes of a terrible TV show you can't escape, or an infinite number of telemarketing calls, which honestly doesn't sound that far-fetched these days. Like, oh
Right.
no, not another one.
It's the juxtaposition of the infinite with the mundane that makes it so funny,
Yeah.
right? It's almost like Mad Magazine is saying, hey, even the most mind-blowing concepts can be brought down to earth with a little bit of humor.
Exactly. It's like they're acknowledging the absurdity of it all, that we can never truly grasp infinity, so we might as well laugh at it.
And that laughter, I think, is a sign of our resilience.
Hmm.
It's how we cope with the vastness of the universe and the things we can't fully comprehend.
So we've gone from pondering the infinite to contemplating the absurdity of Beavis and Butthead as senior citizens.
Right.
It's amazing how these Mad Magazine comics can take us on such wild intellectual rides. But I'm curious to dig a little deeper into that Beavis and Butthead storyline.
Okay, let's unpack it further. The comic takes us beyond those initial gags about bingo night and, VR headsets and into a surprisingly philosophical exploration of their golden years.
Philosophical, Beavis and Butthead. Now you've got me hooked.
Well, let's just say a spilled bowl of prune juice leads to a rather unexpected existential crisis for our favorite duo. Okay, so picture this. Beavis, he accidentally knocks over Butthead's prune juice,
Oh no.
sending Butthead into this tirade about the futility of existence. It's like, his entire world has been shattered by spilled juice.
I can practically hear Butthead's voice. This is it, Beavis. The grand finale. Prune juice all over the floor. What's the point of it all? It's almost poetic in a cynical Butthead kind of way.
You nailed it. You totally nailed his voice. And of course, Beavis, being Beavis, probably just snickers and mutters something about like, doo-doo.
Right.
But beneath the slapstick humor, the comic starts to explore, themes of aging, regret, and the search for meaning in a world that's constantly changing. Like, whoa, deep.
Yeah. It's wild to think that even Beavis and Butthead, the epitome of teenage indifference, would eventually have to confront these big existential questions. It's like the comic is saying that no one, no matter how clueless or carefree they might seem, can escape the inevitable reality check that comes with, well, getting older.
Exactly. It's a reminder that under those layers of irony and absurdity, Mad Magazine often tapped into universal human experiences. We might laugh at Beavis and Butthead's antics, but deep down we can all relate to that feeling of searching for purpose and connection in a world that can, at times, feel kind of chaotic and meaningless.
And it makes you think, how has our perception of aging changed since this comic, hit the stands back in the 90s? Back then, there was this idea that growing old meant fading into the background, accepting that your best years were behind you. Like, you're over the hill. It's all downhill from here.
The stereotypical image of a senior citizen back then was pretty limited. Rocking chairs, bingo nuts, early bird specials at the diner.
Right, like that's it.
But today, we're seeing a much more dynamic and diverse picture of aging. People are living longer, healthier lives. They're staying active, pursuing new passions, and really shattering those outdated expectations of what it means to be old.
I mean, imagine Beavis and Butthead in that context. Starting a heavy metal band in the retirement home.
Oh, yeah.
Crashing their wheelchairs into the buffet table. Or using their walkers to pull these elaborate pranks on the nursing staff.
It's a hilarious image. But it speaks to this idea that aging doesn't have to mean giving up on your passions or your sense of humor. Maybe it's about finding new ways to express those things, adapting to the changes that, come with each stage of life, and embracing the unexpected, even if it involves a few spills along the way.
So maybe Beavis and Butthead, those eternal teenagers, can teach us a thing or two about aging gracefully. Who would have thought?
Right.
But speaking of pop culture icons from the 90s, it makes you wonder, where are they all now? Where would the Fresh Prince be today? Still living in Bel Air or, running a hip-hop empire?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Or imagine the cast of Friends navigating the complexities of grandparenthood and retirement, still hanging out at Central Perk, but swapping coffee for decaf and reminiscing about the good old days.
It's like a cultural time capsule, right? Imagining how these characters who once defined a generation would navigate the world today, It's a fun way to reflect on how our values and perceptions have shifted over time.
It speaks to the enduring power of pop culture, right? These characters and stories, even decades later, they continue to spark our imaginations, and they provide a lens for understanding our own lives and the challenges we face.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even though times change, certain themes and anxieties remain timeless. Whether it's the fear of technology taking over or the search for meaning in a chaotic world, those 90s anxieties still resonate with us in the 21st century.
Exactly. And just like those iconic characters from the 90s, we're all figuring it out as we go along, trying to find our place in a world that's constantly evolving.
So what does this all mean for us, The deep divers navigating the wild ride of the 21st century? Any wisdom we can glean from our trip back to the 90s?
Well, perhaps it's a reminder to, embrace the absurdity of it all, to find humor in the unexpected, and to never stop questioning the world around us.
Yeah. And just like those iconic characters from the 90s, we're all figuring it out as we go along, trying to find our place in a world that's constantly evolving. But hey, maybe a little dose of that Beavis and Butthead rebellious spirit wouldn't hurt either. After all, they're still rocking out, even in their golden years.
Now that we've explored the anxieties and obsessions that Mad Magazine poked fun at, it makes you wonder, what anxieties and obsessions will future generations find humorous and insightful about our time?
Yeah, like what artifacts from our culture will make them cringe, laugh, or ponder the complexities of the 21st century? I can only imagine them digging up like old memes, viral videos, and trying to decode the mysteries of TikTok dances and internet slang. Like,
Or maybe they'll analyze like our obsession with social media, our anxieties about climate change, or, our never-ending quest for the perfect selfie. It's a fascinating thought. Our anxieties and obsessions, the things that keep us up at night, will eventually become artifacts of the past.
it's a humbling thought, isn't it? Our present will someday become someone else's past, ready to be analyzed, interpreted, and hopefully laughed at.
And maybe, just maybe, they'll learn something from our mistakes, our triumphs, and our enduring capacity for finding humor in the face of the absurd.
Well, on that note, we've come to the end of our deep dive into these vintage Mad magazines.
It's been a wild ride. From the depths of existential dread with Beavis and Butthead to the tech-infused chaos of kids' games and even a glimpse into the infinite, who knew that a stack of old magazines could spark such insightful and hilarious conversation? It just goes to show that even decades later, Mad Magazine's satirical wit and sharp social commentary, it still resonates. It's a reminder to never stop questioning, to embrace the absurdity of life, and to find humor in the unexpected.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and remember, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep laughing. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, how these comics, even after all these years, still have something to say about, well, us and the world we live in. Who would have thought Beavis and Butthead could get us thinking about aging gracefully? Or that those wacky kids games would lead to a conversation about technology's hold on our lives?
It really speaks to Mad Magazine's ability to tap into those timeless anxieties and those obsessions that, well, transcend generations, really. It makes you wonder, though, what will future generations find humorous about our time? Insightful, maybe? I mean, what will be the cultural artifacts that make them, I don't know, laugh, cringe even, ponder the complexities of the 21st century? I mean, who knows?
Right. It is fun to imagine them digging through our digital archives, trying to, I don't know, decipher memes and viral videos, and the cryptic language of internet slang. Like, will they understand the obsession with selfies, the allure of social media, or the existential dread of climate change? What will they make of all our anxieties and obsessions, really?
It is a humbling thought, isn't it? Our present will someday become someone else's past, ready to be analyzed, interpreted, and, well, perhaps even ridiculed. But maybe, just maybe, they'll also find wisdom in our follies, inspiration in our creativity, and a sense of connection in our shared human experience.
Yeah, it's like we're part of this ongoing conversation that spans generations. Mad Magazine was tapping into the anxieties of its time, and now, decades later, we're doing the same, reflecting on those anxieties and how they've evolved, and someday, future generations will do the same thing with our cultural relics.
It's a reminder that we're all part of this larger narrative, this tapestry of human experience that connects us across time. And just like Mad Magazine used satire to make us, laugh and think, maybe we can find ways to, I don't know, document our own anxieties, our own obsessions, really, in a way that sparks conversation and provides insights for those who come after us.
Yeah. So as we say goodbye to Beavis and Butthead in their retirement home, those tech-savvy kids babbling it out over charging ports and the infinite absurdity of it all, let's remember that our own present moment will someday become part of history. And what story will we leave behind?
It's a question worth pondering, but for now, let's cherish the laughter, embrace the absurdity, and never stop questioning the world around us.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into these classic Mad magazines. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep laughing.